85,000 people, gone in 7 hours. Not from a bomb, not from an earthquake, from a wall of water no one was warned about, because the people in charge decided silence was safer than the truth. In August 1975, a chain of dams in central China collapsed in the dead of night, one after another, like dominoes built from concrete and denial. Entire towns vanished under a 50-foot tidal wave that moved faster than any car could outrun it. Families were swept from their beds, still dreaming. And here is the part that should terrify you. The government knew the danger for years. Engineers had warned them. Reports were filed. Warnings were buried. Then, when the disaster finally happened, exactly as predicted, the official death toll was locked away for over a decade. No press. No funerals broadcast. No accountability. It would take more than 20 years, and the quiet defection of classified data before the world learned the true scale of what happened that night. This is the story of the deadliest dam failure in human history, and the cover-up built to make sure you never heard about it. What exactly were they so afraid you would find out? To understand the horror, you have to go back further, to the 1950s, when China's new government launched an ambitious plan to tame its rivers forever. In Hainan province, along the Ru River, engineers built the Banqiao Dam, hailed as the Iron Dam, a structure so strong, officials claimed that it could never fail. That word, never, would come back to haunt an entire region. Soviet engineers helped design it. Chinese officials praised it publicly as a triumph of progress over nature. But privately, cracks were already forming, literally. By the early 1960s, a senior hydrologist named Chen Xing had studied the dam's design and reached a forbidden conclusion. The spillways were dangerously undersized. If a truly massive storm ever hit, the dam could not release water fast enough. It would overflow and break, he warned his superiors. He was overruled. The Iron Dam's reputation mattered more than the math. Decades passed. Villages grew up in the dam's shadow, never told they were living inside a kill zone. Then, in early August 1975, a typhoon named Nina slammed into the region and simply stalled. It poured more rain in 24 hours than the area normally saw in a year. Reservoirs designed for caution were filling toward catastrophe. Phone lines to request emergency floodgate openings were cut by the storm. Telegrams describing the rising danger sat unsent. And somewhere in the dark, on the night of August 8th, the Iron Dam, the one that could never fail, finally gave way. What happened next has been described by survivors in words that still sound unimaginable. 50 years later, witnesses recalled hearing a sound like distant thunder that never stopped getting louder. Then the wall of water arrived. Estimates place it at 6 miles wide and 10 meters high, moving across flat farmland at the speed of a car on a highway. There was no time to run. There was barely time to scream. In a matter of hours, the Banqiao Dam and over 60 smaller dams downstream failed in a chain reaction, one bursting under pressure from the last. Entire townships were erased from the map before dawn. Here is the moment that redefines everything you think you know about this disaster. For years, Western estimates placed the death toll in the low thousands. China's official state record listed a number that seemed almost orderly, clean, believable. It was a lie. The true toll, later reconstructed from regional records, suggests as many as 171,000 people died, not only from the initial flood, but from the famine and disease that swept through the survivors afterward, trapped without food, clean water, or medical care for weeks. For over a decade, the disaster was not mentioned in Chinese state media at all. It was treated as if it never happened. The dam's failure was classified information. Survivors were discouraged from discussing it. International journalists were denied access to the region entirely. The cover-up held for nearly 20 years. It was not broken by a whistleblower's confession. It was broken slowly. Through satellite reconnaissance images, defector testimony, and a handful of brave hydrology researchers who, in the 1990s, began quietly cross-referencing population records that simply did not add up. Villages that should have existed did not. Birth records that should have continued stopped cold in August 1975. The numbers themselves became the witnesses the government could never silence. When the true scale of the Banqiao disaster finally reached international engineering circles in the 1990s, it forced a reckoning the Chinese government could no longer avoid quietly. In 1998, decades after the flood, state media in China finally acknowledged the disaster publicly for the first time, listing it, almost in passing, as one of the worst structural failures in history. There was no formal trial. No single official was ever publicly held responsible for the original engineering warnings that had been ignored. Chen Xing, the hydrologist who had warned of the spillway flaw decades earlier, lived to see his warnings vindicated, but never received a public apology for being silenced. Survivors who lost entire families received no formal compensation acknowledging the scale of what happened to them. Many lived their whole lives never knowing the true number of people who died alongside their loved ones that night. And here is why this still matters today. The Banqiao failure remains the deadliest dam disaster ever recorded, a grim case study now taught in engineering programs worldwide on what happens when political pride overrides scientific caution. Every time a government today delays releasing flood warnings, downplays a structural inspection, or buries an inconvenient safety report, the ghost of Banqiao is standing in the room. Modern dam safety standards across the globe were quietly rewritten because of what happened on that single night in Henan province. The price of that knowledge was paid by people who never got to vote on it and never got to read the report that could have saved them. History does not forget. It just waits. It waits in sealed file cabinets, in unsent telegrams, in the silence of villages that no longer have anyone left to speak for them. Power can delay the truth. It can bury it under decades of denial, but it cannot erase the empty space where thousands of lives used to be. The Banqiao Dam taught the world a brutal lesson, that the most dangerous failures are rarely the ones nature creates alone. They are the ones human pride refuses to admit until it is far too late. So we have to ask ourselves, how many warnings, right now, somewhere in the world, are sitting unread on someone's desk? If this story disturbed you, the way it disturbed us to research it, tell us what part stayed with you in the comments, and subscribe if you want to keep uncovering the histories the world tried to forget.